YouTube, welcome back. Got another video for you, and this is Saruman. He's an enchanter, and I think he's a really great guardian. One of the best, in my opinion, especially out of the enchanters. Saruman, he's a really good initiator, and he's got a nice bubble shield that when it pops, it silences the enemies. So it almost kind of acts as a deterrent in a team fight to try to pop a shield right away, because it's going to silence the whole team and not let you use abilities, which I really like. And he's got a lot of burst damage like Gandalf, but I like him because his abilities don't necessarily put him as much in danger as Gandalf. So in that respect, I want to say that Saruman would be a better alternative to Gandalf, but they do both have some different abilities, and they're both very good. So I'll get into it. I'll go with the loadouts first. I'm running Westernese Relic, and that's a really good relic for any enchanter, any ability power, because it gives you a nice balance of high ability power mixed in with ability penetration, which is going to let you do more damage to enemies that have a higher resistance to ability powers. And so it really just makes you overall more effective against different against all types of guardians, ones with high resistance, especially against enchanters, maybe some tacticians, and then you got your defenders who are going to have a lot of resistance. Now, the second relic I like to do is Blackgate Relic, and using an ability gives you a shield that blocks for 20 damage per level for 15 seconds. While the shield is active, you get 10 ability power per level, and that's good for 20-second cooldown. This is really good. It really adds a ton of absorption to Saruman's shield. I think just like Gandalf, it really works really well. I would use this belt on Gandalf as well. What's nice about it too is it gives you some more shield on your Blackgate before it wears off, so your abilities stay at a higher ability power, so you'll be doing more damage. Now this is more of a late game relic, loadout I mean, so you've got to play smart early game because you're not going to be as effective until level 8. I mean, Saruman still is very strong just by his abilities alone, especially when he's matched with another player on your team that is a good composition for the two of them. But Saruman is also kind of an early game belt. I think he does really well with Seed of Scene in Westernese, because at level 4 you're really going to get a big boost in ability power. So that's always another way I like to play Saruman. It just depends. If you're running more of an early game, you should probably run Seed of Scene with Westernese, but if you're expecting a longer match, maybe competitive, I would go Westernese Blackgate. So Saruman's passive. Saruman gains 10 basic attack reflection and ability reflection constantly. Pretty much that's useless. Saruman also gains 20 ability penetration buff for the next 3 seconds after striking an enemy with a basic attack. Now this is also one of the best passives in the game, and it especially suits him because he is an enchanter and you max ability power, so you really be able to maximize your penetration without having to really focus on it too much. Now, what's kind of interesting about this passive, and then you should all understand, if you don't know this already, if you strike, okay, it says when Saruman gains 20 ability penetration buff for the next 3 seconds after striking an enemy with his basic attack. If you strike more than one enemy at the same time, that buff increases. So if I hit 3 soldiers with one basic attack, it's going to stack up to full 60 penetration on abilities, which is awesome. Now, why do I still have Westernese, which has penetration? Because in the team fights, I try not to lead in with my basic attack. It is nice to be able to just pop your ability and still have that penetration active without having to worry about going in with your basic attack. That might put you in a dangerous situation, and you always want to play smart in the team fight. So that's the reason for that. So he has a very strong passive. Try not to put too much penetration because of his passive, but I always slip a little bit in there just in case. Now for abilities, I always level Burst Shield up first, and that's because it gives me more of a tanky approach, especially early on, and the burst of the shield does a lot of good damage. Especially with early game belt, you'll notice the damage a lot better. But I really like the shield, especially early game. He's very kind of a weak guardian, being an enchanter. This will also let you, when you're initiating and trying to control your game early game, to be able to, you and your teammate, to really take more damage and be able to sustain a higher amount of damage from attacks while trying to keep control of your lane. You can see I'm here, I'm middle lane for this game right now, but if I was in top or bottom lane, the shield would be really good because you're going against 2 enemy guardians, you'll be able to absorb more damage, and if you're with an archer like Legolas, which is what my ideal laning partner would be, you'd be able to take a lot more damage while Legolas can poke away from a distance. So I'll read the description of Burst Shield. Saruman creates 6 seconds of shield on himself that absorbs 80 up into 300 damage. When that shield duration or health expires, it will detonate in all directions at medium range, giving 40 to 160 ability damage to nearby enemies and silencing them for 1.5 seconds. That silence is the really nice part of the shield. I think it's actually what really makes Saruman a very good guardian, and I'd probably bump him down in how good I thought he was on a rating if he didn't have that silence on the shield. So with Blackgate and the Burst Shield and your ability power, that's going to convert into more shield absorption. You're going to have a really good amount, probably around 700, 800 ability power or damage that you can absorb. And I do like to level that up first. So the second ability that I like to level up is Spies of Saruman, and this is a really good ability. It's a great harassing ability because you can still attack enemies under the tower. It's got a little bit of slow, and it does a really good amount of damage. It's a small amount of damage. There's 3 birds and they keep pecking, so when you add all that damage up, it's going to really do a lot. So what Spies of Saruman does is summons 3 birds, swarms for 6 seconds that deals up to 10 up into 25 ability damage each second, slows them for 10 up into 16%, and reveals enemies at medium range. So he's got some really good passive. I'm going to hesitate when I say this. Hopefully it kind of makes sense, but it's a lot of his abilities have these almost like these passive perks to them that really make him a good guardian. Like his shield, I said, when it bursts, it silences Spies of Saruman. When the birds are out, it's revealing enemies that are invisible, which makes you able to counter, say, a Bilbo, a Frodo, anybody that has a invisibility potion. I think it's a really good ability, and it's going to be your one of your main damage abilities. The thing about the shield is if somebody sees your shield up, they're not necessarily going to run right into you. They're probably going to want to wait till your shield's down. Spies of Saruman, you'll be able to engage enemies from a distance, puts you in a safe position, so I like to level that one up second. Now when you get your ultimate, you're obviously going to want to level that up. It's a very, very strong ability, especially when you go all AP. And what you got to remember about this ability, though, is that it's a channeling ability. It's easy to interrupt, and it lasts for 2 seconds. And if you don't get this ability off properly, or somebody interrupts it, then you're really going to hurt your team in the team fight, because Saruman's all burst damage. If you stop his ultimate, you're really not going to be contributing too much. So it does have a good range. Try not to get too close unless you need to. It's great against enemies that are very aggressive and try to rush into you, especially with your shield. What it does is Saruman's voice channels for 2 seconds, causing 32 up into 50 ability damage every 0.2 seconds in a wide line at long range, and it adds up for a ton of damage. So if you can get enemies in there and keep them there, or get them slowed, this is really going to do a lot. It's going to be harder against more experienced players that know to get out of there. It's going to be very easy against newer players that don't realize how much damage it adds up to. Now, the last ability I level up is Focus Magic, and I really just like this ability for the fact that it's a root. It works on more than one guardian, and you can't get out of it with a cleansing potion, which is key. This ability is very awesome. Makes him really great at putting enemy players out of the fight. Also good at getting enemy players that are trying to escape. What it does is, at close range, Saruman lifts enemy guardians into the air, suppressing them for 1.2 seconds. When the enemy guardians are released from being levitated, Saruman delivers 30 up into 60 damage to the target and an extra 40 up into 160 ability damage to enemies at medium range. Now, the rotation that I like to use, that I'm going to recommend, I find is really the most successful when running Saruman, is whenever you're engaging your enemy, always pop your shield, because A, it's going to absorb damage for you, and B, when it pops, it's going to do damage, and C, it's going to silence them, letting them not do any abilities for 1.5 seconds. So that's always the first ability you want to do. It's good for you to initiate, and also is very good to prevent your enemies from initiating you, silencing them, which is awesome. Then the second ability you're always going to want to pop is Spies of Saruman. And what that does is, when your birds are up there, it's really going to start doing the harassment that Saruman's really known for. So you can see I pop my you want to pop your shield, then you hit your Spies of Saruman that are going to also slow enemies and keep attacking them. And that's usually when I go in with my ultimate. And I like that combination because while slowing the enemies and also revealing, in some cases, you'll be able to get more damage out of your ultimate, slowing them within your targeted area. And then I really kind of feel out the situation whenever I run Focus Magic, so that might be one of the last abilities that I use in a trade with another team. The reason for that is because if you do all those abilities and get them off successfully, they should be just about dead. And if you lift up an enemy, and remember your Focus Magic can lift up more than one, you'll be able to put some enemies out of the fight while your team is able to take advantage of the enemies being rooted and probably finish them off. Now that's pretty much the rotation that I always like to run, and I think you'll be most successful for that. The other way I like to do is always pop your shield, and then sometimes I go with the Spies of Saruman, and then I do Focus Magic, and then I kind of read out the situation for using my ultimate. That way I let my teammates do all the early damage, and then I'm able to do the cleanup with my ultimate afterwards. So there's those two different options. It's just using your ultimate before or after you want to use your Focus Magic. Now for the commands that I like to run with Saruman, I always like to run the heal. That's because very early on he's very prone to getting ganked, especially if you go against a team that's running a group of 5 in the first 30 seconds of the match and tries to get a kill on you. So that might save you from a situation, especially early game. Don't really use it late game, but it's very strong early game. And the second ability I always like to do is Smite. Because Saruman has such a good amount of burst damage, Smite is really good for lowering the resistance, taking a chunk of 30% of health out of enemy teammates, and then when you get all of your burst damage off, you'll be doing more damage. They'll already be 2/3 of health, and you'll likely be able to kill them with a quick rotation pulled off successfully. The third command I like to do is Lightning, and that's just so I have some added group abilities. Nice thing about Lightning is that it can attack more than one enemy, and also my ultimate, so I can take out almost half of any enemy's team's health if I'm able to get both my Lightning off well, and also my ultimate. And the last command I like to use is kind of tricky. Most of the times it is the Summon Defense, because I like to root them in, especially that I have a rooting ability, the Focus Magic, and the Spies of Saruman. It's a lot easier for me to keep the enemy team within the Summon Defense. Not to mention that my Focus Magic ability is able to root more than one enemy, so I can hold two people, even 3 or more. It just depends how close they all run together, but I can get more than one enemy and hold them in the summon defense for longer, which is very valuable. And it also allows my team to do a lot more damage. And getting stuck in a summon defense is really not good. I don't really need to say that though. The other option I go for is Flash Light, and it's because we're in a group fight and I have my shield, it bursts, it's going to silence enemies for 1.5 seconds, and then if I was to follow that with a Flash of Light, that would be about like another 2 seconds, and you'd have a very awkward long time for the enemy team where they can't use any abilities. I'd say you only use this one for a competitive match, so that you know you can get your abilities off before the enemy team. Flash of Light is very, very useful. I think it's really underused, but you kind of got to work with your team to be able to really get the most out of that command, because it does have a long cooldown even though it does no damage. And for potions, I'm going to say you should always carry a cleanse potion. I always carry 1, if not 2. Saruman doesn't have any abilities that gets him out of any situations, so it's a nice way to slip out, especially the early game when you do not want to die. It's very important for you to try to out-level and get to level 8, especially with this loadout. So I try to run a cleanse because it saves my life almost every game. I'm always going to recommend you run a cleanse. Now you can see here how much burst damage I can do with my ultimate, especially when the enemy teams are stuck casting their abilities, and I can keep them in there for a lot longer. They're also very hesitant when I start to run towards them and engage them. I really give them a hard time. Having your shield is a big deterrent for an enemy team to try to run in there. So you can see I was able to root, and then that Legolas knocked me back, but he was still rooted. So even if he tried to stop me from casting that ability, it's too late. It's going to go off no matter what. Now you can see here, everyone's calling for the top creep, so we're going top creep. If you kind of find yourself in a stalemate, I'd always go up there, but you got to be cautious, especially if the enemy team has, like right now, they have a Sauron. So got to watch out for Sauron hitting his ultimate, because he can reveal us, but he probably doesn't have it. I didn't really pay attention to when he used it last. You also got to worry about strikers, people that can move pretty stealth, like a Bilbo, Frodo. They can steal it from you, especially Frodo, just staying invisible until the last second. He can use his silence and root, and then just take one jab at the top creep and kill it. So you got to be careful for that. And right there, we saw the enemy team. I was communicating with my team, and I was telling them not to jump out yet. And you can see that some of them walked past us. We caught them right in the middle, and I really surprised them. Really made them not know what they wanted to do at that point, and we did all that quick damage and won that group fight. And you can see right now, after killing the top creep and the enemy team coming up there, we're able to just finish this last tower off very quick, no challenge. I want to thank you guys for watching, and I'll have another video up very, very soon. So keep subscribing, tell people that you might know to check out my channel. If you're not already subscribed but have seen some of my videos, please subscribe. Lets me know that people kind of like my channel, makes me want to make more videos, and then I'll have more stuff on my channel. So thanks.